You're listening to Raising Anchor, a Rhode Island FC podcast. We're glad you're here. Hello and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Entrican, coming to you on Monday, June 3rd. The Draw King saga continues as RIFC notches their 8th draw of the season. Does the recent result in Hartford feel like a positive or a negative? To figure that out, and joining me as always is the co-host with the most, Jason Carey. Jason, how is it going, sir?
Not too bad, buddy. Of course, the first time I ever decided to bet on a soccer game, won't come out right. I should have knew that we're the Draw Kings and just went with it, even though I wanted the win.
We're going to unpack that because there is some scandal, some controversy behind that betting option. But speaking of betting, and before we go any further, we have a special guest on tonight's recording, the one, the only, Tom Quinlan. He's a self-proclaimed stake king who produces the news with Gene Valicente on WPRO. He's the play-by-play caller on The Score, and he also hosts New England Soccer Weekly. Tom, how are you doing?
Good evening. How are you?
Good.
I'm good. How are you? More important, how are you doing? We have the results of a weekend full of derby, full of maybe some partying and some stories to tell. How was it going not being at the game? How was that for you?
It was nice to have a weekend off. I prefer to be doing every game as much as possible. I'm very grateful that Rhode Island FC decided to join up with Cumulus Providence this year, and I apologize for my dryer going off in the background once again. That's very selfish of my dryer, but it's every now and then it's nice to just get away. I mean, you're watching from afar, so you're rooting, so it's nice to be a fan from afar. Part of me wanted to go out there to the game, but also it's nice to kind of just not do anything when you have to wake up at 4 a.m. every day. Or 3 a.m. every day, depending on which time of the day I decide to wake up. So, I definitely miss calling the games, but I also have fun being a fan as well. I will say, because I know you might have some Tommy Betts questions, because I do hear the controversy of the betting, so I'd like to hear that. I do not bet on Rhode Island FC. As the play-by-play announcer for Rhode Island FC, there is an integrity thing there. Also, there's a thing called insider trading, which that pretty much feels like the same thing when you're the play-by-play of announcer of a team and you're betting on that game beforehand. It's like insider trading. So I never will, as long as I work for the team as a broadcaster, bet on Rhode Island FC. But I probably would have bet the upset for a win this weekend. I felt like this team is due, and this was the perfect game to do it against Hartford. And you probably felt a little bit confident in the first 10 minutes of the game, and then, Draw Kings came back into play.
I'm glad you said that because, one, that doesn't mean that you can't share your information. So there's like those insider trading bots out there, the algorithms. Yeah. Just because you're not making the bets doesn't mean you can't give the love back out to the fans and tell us what the right play-by-plays are for the weeks, because you're not putting money on it. But you're absolutely right. It was a plus 135 for Rhode Island. We took a bet. I think I put 100 down or 50 down. We were in Connecticut. So the story goes, we didn't take the bus. We actually drove down with one of the capos and decided to stop in Hartford, did a little gambling, made a little money, then decided to convert those winnings into an all-or-nothing bet on Rhode Island FC. Yeah. Jason here, who I don't think I've ever seen you gamble. You've never even bought a lottery ticket when it's like Powerball at the billions, right? Like that's not your style.
Yeah, not my thing.
Yeah. So and here's the tough part, Tom. The spread, the draw was the more lucrative payout, and I saw it was like 3-1 on either team winning, and I was like, man, there's a part of me right now that wants to make the smart money play, but like you said, the pride, the passion, and the heart strings pulled for the win for Rhode Island FC. And for those first 20 minutes, I was living on cloud 9.
Well, that's where the cash out option's your best friend sometimes. I will say the good thing about soccer too, when it comes to soccer betting, is that you can double chance it, right? So if you're, if you feel like, okay, I feel like Rhode Island FC is going to walk out of here with points today, you do win draw, which, you know what? I would say a lot of games that this team plays in, you can feel confident they could pull out points. I mean, are they getting wins? And is it frustrating as all hell that they can't close out games? Absolutely. But at the same time, is still relevant in June. So it's a team that I think you can trust that they will bring you home some money. You just got to make the right play. And now you know for the future.
The more you know.
I went all in. So before we start talking about the game, just want to get through some quick news on the segments here. So first and foremost, today is actually our 1-year anniversary for the podcast. I got a bunch of the trademark registrations. Had to bring Tom in for it. What's really sad is I got the alert on Saturday at the game. I'm like, what would be a nice gift to the podcast? Just a win. Not the money bets aside, just a win. So, and it's also really exciting. This is number 52 in terms of episodes, which is crazy because normally we haven't done only one every week, but we've also skipped a few weeks during the off season. So perfectly, the stars have aligned. And in honor of us being at our 1-year anniversary, we're proud to announce that we are joining officially with the Blazing Musket as their premier Rhode Island FC podcast and coverage. So officially today, along with our friends at Revolution Recap, United in Green, the Fine Riders, and Sam Minton, Seth, all of them, we're officially joining them in that side. We're not with the Believe Network. We got to earn our chops there, I think, at one point. But we are officially represented as the Blazing Musket. So really proud to announce that and excited. Jason, did you think we would make it a year?
Yeah, I think I have a few years for us. I think if we get to year 5 and we're still doing this, I'm like, what's going on? Not that I'm saying we're just going to quit, but, burnout might set in at some point.
There's no burn. Tom, how long you been doing this now? 16 years, something like that, right?
Well, I started doing broadcasting in general when I was 16. I started out as a public address announcer, then doing local TV stuff. So if you're willing to put yourself through pain, yeah, you could live in broadcasting forever.
What's our burnout year? When do we need to worry? What's that swing where we really have to check in?
I would say the fact that you made it a year says that this brand has a lot of sustainability. Also, the upside for a brand like this is that Rhode Island FC is new, right? So it's you're the pioneers of the network. So you create what the landscape is in terms of Rhode Island FC coverage. So your ceiling is limitless, really, in my opinion, just because you're the first, right? New England Soccer Weekly has been here, but we cover the Revs, we do a lot of MLS coverage. You're strictly Rhode Island FC, and that's critical to the market. And as long as you do it is as long as you're going to survive. For example, the Burning Musket, I think it was originally. I forget it's somebody. I mean, I'm Blazing Musket.
It was the Bent first.
Bent Musket. I should know this off the top of my head, being here forever, but but Blazing Musket is now it's ingrained in my head. When the Bent Musket started, it was started by a guy by the name of Steve Stower, I believe. And, he passed it on generation to generation. So maybe Jason might not be here forever, and maybe you might not be here forever, Matt, but the brand itself, Raising Anchor Podcast, this is the podcast home for everything you need for Rhode Island FC. So whether one of you guys moves on, somebody's going to take that torch and run with it. So it might not be you guys that do it, but this brand will last as long as somebody wants to do it. So you guys are paving the way for that, and you should be proud of yourselves.
If one of us leaves, we get a anchor and set on fire, pass it to the new generation.
I still want the foam makers at the games. I think that's a huge opportunity from a marketing perspective.
Either that, or what you should do now is set up a contract where, I might leave, but I will have royalties on this brand for the rest of my life because I created it. So Jason will always get paid. So when Rhode Island FC eventually gets eaten up by MLS at some point, you'll be an MLS podcast. You'll be the first Rhode Island FC MLS podcast. I'm kidding, of course.
Perfect. Someone subscribing to Alexi Lawless's buy the whole dang thing concept. I love it.
No, I was just saying MLS is definitely going to try the whole buy the everything thing.
How much would you pay for it at this point? If you were Don Garber, what's the price tag you would put on USL right now?
On USL? I don't know if I would buy individual teams. I would buy out individual teams if I'm USL, right? So Louisville's a market I would look at. Pittsburgh's a market I would look at based on media market size alone. Tampa Bay is a media market I would look at. Sacramento's up there, San Antonio up there, maybe Phoenix is definitely up there. And I would say Rhode Island FC.
But you wouldn't buy the whole thing?
Nope. I would buy the most financially viable teams. And I would say those teams come off without looking at their finances deep enough as the most financially viable, the teams I listed before. And I would throw Rhode Island FC in there based on the stadium, because that meets probably one of the requirements that Don Garber is looking for when we're talking about, teams entering MLS, right? And it's not just like it's your basic cookie cutter 4,000 seat stadium like they have down there in Charlotte. No, you have an 11,000 seat stadium coming here to Pawtucket. So you're a player, and you can expand. We've heard those conversations in the background about how they could expand Tidewater. So, but it's, I'm just joking. I don't know if all this stuff that we're talking about is 20 years down the road.
Exactly. So, hey, speaking of things that have happened and maybe down the road as well, busy week last week with the new president announcement of David Pert into the team. He did fly in to have his first conversations with the team, the front office. I think he had to fly right back out because we were wondering if we might see him at the Hartford match just to kind of understand, like, as he could kind of drink in the first derby. But he should be returning on a permanent move in the next couple of weeks. I don't think you got a chance to talk about it before you did your recording. I've been waiting all week to hear your takes, your perspective on this signing. What's been going through your mind?
What's most interesting to me is that he's got a very extensive media background. I think that should stand out to a lot of people because, he's got, background with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's got background in the Houston market. Like, these are serious markets that we're talking about here. So it's about brand exposure. It's about brand viability. It's about how are we going to grow Rhode Island FC from a visual standpoint. I think his resume is impressive. I think that can't be denied that this guy has a long history working in an office, getting people involved with sports teams. From the way I read his resume, he's not coming in here to make player signings. He's not coming in here to, I think, be the firewall or, I don't think he is a filter for Kano. I think this, because Brett was with the league, right? And Brett, has a real deep knowledge with the league and whatnot. So it felt like it was a collaboration between Brett and Kano. Kano was probably making more of the player decisions, but Brett definitely, because of his experience working within USL Championship, in my opinion, I believe it was more of a collaboration. I think this gives Kano the freedom to fully take over all player personnel decisions moving forward. And this guy is strictly the business guy. This guy is going to be responsible for growing the brand of Rhode Island FC. So, we're not talking about small potatoes here when we're talking about the Penguins, when we're talking about the Houston Rockets and whatnot. So I think that's really interesting that they brought in a media guy. Those types of things, I think, could be good if you bring in the right people, because then they know how to talk to the executives and the decision makers when it comes to getting this brand on the right platform. Like, you have the Nesson deal right now and whatnot, but how does it expand beyond that? He's going to look at Cumulus and see what we're offering, I'm sure. So I think it's a good move. I think it's a good move because I think you need somebody that knows how to visibly get a brand out front.
Do you think it hurts him at all that he doesn't have any soccer-related experience? Maybe there'll be some sort of transition when he kind of learns the league and the sport.
Well, it kind of goes back to what I was just saying before, right? Like, I think it stands out to me that he's not. I think it's a good thing he's not a soccer guy, because you don't have so many hands in the pot when it comes to roster decisions. This is Kano's now thing. Like, Kano is the soccer guy. I don't look at this new guy as the soccer guy. I look at him as business only. I don't think that hurts you. I think if it will hurt you if he doesn't know how to sell soccer. That's where it hurts you. If he doesn't know how to sell soccer to the market, and if that fails, okay, then we've got a problem. But he's not here to pick players, and I think that's actually a good thing. I think that, and plus, I think you have so many soccer minds still within this organization that from a business standpoint, what are we doing to raise money? And I think that's what it comes down to with him. I think I think it's a money play. I think it's a financial branding, like, just based on looking at the resume alone, and with it being like, I mean, what do you guys see when you read his resume and you see where he's coming from? And like, would you rather have more of a Brett Louis in this position, or are you intrigued at the fact that you have a guy that has a business background that has worked in big leagues like the NFL, or worked with big leagues like the NFL, like the NBA, MLB, NHL. You got to be able to sell these networks. Does that kind of cover up not having the soccer part of it?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm impressed with his pedigree because it's multi-sport, to your point. So it's not that I'm worried about the soccer. I am curious though, like you said, these are well-established organizations, regardless of whatever rank he was within those operations pieces. This is a team that there's no rule book, right? This is uncharted territory for any executive that comes in. So for me, it's more of a, almost, do you need, I would say, less about a soccer person and maybe more someone that is, I don't want to say Rhode Island native. I think that is not the right way to say it, but someone who understands how to market to New England, right? Yeah. Like the one thing we hear all the time about this club so far, we see someone with soccer jerseys on, a kit, just anything, and we go, "Hey, have you heard about our club yet?" And it's deers in a headlight, right? Like there's definitely an opportunity to continue to grow the brand. And I that's the piece I'm worried about. It's easy to sell tickets to a 49ers fan or a 49ers game. It's a lot harder to teach an entire community about the sport of soccer outside of that, 1% of people who are already tuning in every week with their money, their dollars, their eyes. Like that's where I'm really curious if David's going to live up to that.
Well, you've talked to him. You guys have had him on the show. I believe I saw last week. I haven't listened to it yet, but
not yet. No, we've talked to David.
Gotcha. I saw the headline.
Brady.
I thought.
Yeah, we talked to David Brady, and he let us know what was going on. There was a hunt for someone. They knew what they wanted to. To your point, there was this marketing effort. There was this, effort to improve the revenue growth or the sales. I won't say that this was strictly about tickets. I know that a couple of weeks ago we talked that tickets were part of it. I still think that is a flag, if you will, of the barometer of we weren't selling out, but I don't think it was because of the weather or the expectations that were on Brett Louie. I think it was more of the understanding that like what are you doing with this? Okay, you're not selling out now. What are you doing to expand upon it? So that would be my guess when you bring such a big name in like this in terms of the class and the caliber that David is offering. My guess is this was an elevation, and they found what they needed for Brett to do. And I think it was a win-win across the board, if I'm being honest. The only concern I have is did we give Brett enough time to do those things, or was this just the right move at the right time? Because let's get honest too. This is only 2 weeks after the announcement of Brett's departure into that new role. It sounds like they kind of already knew that they had this. Like you don't bring a C-suite executive in less than 2 weeks unless you've already kind of been having that conversation, right?
Yeah, it kind of the feeling I'm getting is that this was building behind the scenes for prior to the announcement of Brett departing from the role as president. And it helps if you're a guy like Brett Johnson, where you have all these connections, right? Where you can have this quick transition plan. And, I don't think they would have pulled the trigger on taking Louis out if they didn't have this guy lined up.
Yeah, my concern is why maybe, I mean, it was a leak, right? Why there was that little bit of a gap.
They say it was a leak. I mean, obviously, a journo got their hands on the information. So I think if they had been able to keep it under wraps another week and a half, we would have just seen it as a one-to-one transition and not this delay or like, hey, what's going on there? So yeah, I think there's some tangibility there to what you and Tom are saying. But listen, either way, I think that this is a fantastic move. He was the ops guy to USL. He was the ops guy in conjunction with everything we learned from Phoenix Rising, from the Brett Johnson acquisitions. Like this was a guy who built our playbook for how we were going to participate in the league. So now like that work has all been done. It's kind of like when Vicky before, she got all the revenue sponsors, she got all the corporate partnerships done before she went on to her next thing. So it's not like these people are transitioning and leaving the organization high and dry, right? Like they're doing their jobs and then they're moving into that next opportunity. So like that's where I kind of see like we're not like this isn't panic mode,
No, I definitely don't think it's panic mode. I think there definitely is a lot of early moving pieces. I think the Louis thing, it does stand out, but I think what should ease people's minds with it is that he's still working with Brett Johnson in some capacity. If he wasn't with Brett anymore, I think that would be rightly a concern for more red flags. The fact that he's going to be part of Fortuitous Partners, which means he's going to be part of the completion of this stadium building and everything around Pawtucket, that's, I think, going to be good. And then we'll see what happens after that. I mean, it's not uncommon in sports to see team presidents leave a role and then go back to that role later down the road. So is the door shut for Brett Louie to come back as team president? I don't think so. Will he do it? I don't know. Now, because if kind of if you're Brett, right? Take Brett's angle of it for a second. You get Rhode Island FC off to a launch. You kept them relevant through the first part of the season I would say, because you're still in a playoff hunt contention. You built up a fairly good roster of USL players, and then you're seeing through the completion of the first soccer-specific stadium in New England. Why would you need to come back to the Rhode Island FC role, I would argue? And, why wouldn't this be a promotion to Major League Soccer or European soccer in some levels? So, it's a lot. It's certainly a lot. I think just to go back to David Pert though for a second, I think for him to really make all three of us feel good here, get out in front of the cameras, come talk to us, sit down with us, sit down with everybody. Don't be that person, or don't be this organization. And I'm not saying this organization is, but don't be that organization that kind of shuts out people from hearing from a guy like David Pert. You want to hear from him. You want to see him. I think that's why people liked Brett. Okay. The faces of this organization before Brett Louie got removed as team president was Brett Louie and Cano Smith. When you thought Rhode Island FC, as much as I respect Brett Johnson, I respect the hell out of him for what he's done to keep his commitment to bring Rhode Island FC to, the state. The people that have led out in front while Brett has been doing his other business ventures has been Louie, has been Cano. David Pert needs to be what Brett Louie was for this team, constantly being that face in the community and on TV and wherever he can be. On the radio, Brett Louie was everywhere. David Pert's got to do the same thing.
I was kind of hoping optics-wise, it would have been good if he showed up at the Derby match, but
I asked. They said that the timing just wasn't there and that they needed to get him in for it was important that he address the team and the front office, because they were just as much wanting answers like the fans had been kind of crying out for. So I agree with you, Tom. I would even argue that Brett Johnson is the face of Tidewater, right? The entire development group, they're good or bad, right? Like that's kind of where he's gravitated to over the last 5 years.
Sure. Yeah. You know what? Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Let's jump in. We've got a lot to cover, and I want to make sure that we spend enough time talking about this derby, because this was, one, it was history made, but two, there was a lot of different things happening depending on what you watched, depending on where you watched it from. And I really want to make sure we unpack this. So first and foremost, just getting the fan experience out of the way, major credit to Rhode Island FC. They brought down buses upon buses of fans to come out for an experience. Hartford buried us out into the deep back nine for us, sequestered fan experience. There was food, there was music. We watched the final for the Champions final. Sorry if you had money on, Dortmund guys, but it was an incredible time. And
bet against Real.
No, you never bet against Real. But it was an incredible time because, it wasn't just the Defiance. I want to make that clear. Defiance actually was probably, I'd say, 1/3 of that group. There were a lot of season ticket members and casual fans who just wanted to come out and see what this was all about. It had definitely been kind of hyped up internally on our side. But Tom, I got to ask you, you didn't get to travel. The first thing I heard was it was the Route 6 Derby on the broadcast. I know that you had went through a couple of names on your show last week. How did they land on that? What are your thoughts about that? Talk us through it.
I did hear Route 6 Derby and it popped me. I screamed in my apartment actually, because I like it. I think it makes the most sense. I think it's the most simple. It's one road. I don't know if the broadcast heard us talking about it with Seton the other day. But if they did, thank you for listening. Keep listening and subscribe to New England Soccer Weekly. But I do think we should tap into the creativity of both fan bases to figure out a name. I do think, but I also think too, it's got to be organic, right? Like Route 6 Derby is the safe, easy, okay, this is the baseline for the name for now. I think, El Clamico was a effing hilarious name. But the problem with El Clamico was, I think the real rivalry between Rhode Island and Connecticut right now is oysters, because that's what Connecticut is claiming that they have. They're claiming they have better oysters than we do. We're the oyster state. So I think, Route 6 Derby, I love that somebody used the name. I do think that the fans should be in control of what the naming is. And I think both at some point supporters groups will come together and agree on a name. I think we're not there yet, but I think everybody's having fun playing around with stuff. I think unofficially for right now, the unofficial name for this derby is Route 6, but I do believe it's going to change.
Yeah, I think that's the easy option.
I don't know, though, if I agree with you, Tom, that these two supporter groups are going to come together now at this point. There was a
little bit of drama,
there was some shenanigans, after the game. Are you up to speed on everything that happened about that?
So all I saw was a banner was taken before the game, and then Rhode Island FC fans had to complain to the front office of Hartford. I did not see it, but I do enjoy that there is hatred between the supporters groups. Hatred is good. But I do think, just like the North Koreans and the South Koreans, at times we do need to come together in the DMZ to be able to work out the essential fine details of what is important for both nations.
Tom, I'm not going to make you tell us which one of us is North Korea in that conflict,
Hartford is North Korea. Hartford is North Korea. Hartford is 1,000% North Korea. We are the South Koreans. We're good people.
You heard it. So for you and for listeners that have been trying to pay attention to the outbursts online, basically what happened is Hartford Athletic, the director of operations, came over to the group and said, hey, if you're bringing things in, you need to go have them put on display. And it was also a security measure for them to know, like, what are you bringing in case you were trying to slip in anything inappropriate or irresponsible. So the club, both Rhode Island FC and the supporters group, were like, wait, we're not going to give you our stuff and leave it there. And they said, no, we promise you it won't be touched. It won't be, messed with in any way, shape, or form. Well, that ended up being true for all of like 3 seconds, apparently. One of the supporters group, there's two of them, surprisingly, in Hartford. You would never tell by the 16 fans that were in the bleachers, but one of the two groups went over, took the banner down, posted a bunch of, their tomfoolery about them having it and winning the ultra battle of the day. And then at the end of the night, we complained as a group, because like it was more of a complaint to Hartford having failed us than it was, anything going on with like the supporter groups, because sometimes in like some of those ultra behaviors, you've got scarves getting stolen, you've got sometimes acts of physical concern, but that's all it was, is they just went and took it. And then Hartford now is trying to spin it that we cried because our banner was stolen. And it was more of a, well, no, you went and like took something undefended that you made us go put up. So it's kind of like, at least tell the story the right way. Allegedly, Hartford did return the banner to Defiance. The operations teams got together and got it back. But like, there's this opinion out there that Rhode Island's crying about it. And it's like, no, like, set the record straight. If you tell us to do something and we follow the rules, and then you break your own rules, like, own that, and then we'll build on this hatred of each other.
Yeah.
But don't come in like we're crying because we had our toy taken from us. Like, at least set that narrative accurately.
Yeah, this should have been like, haha, we stole your banner, you suck.
Yeah, it's like, cool, come to us next and we'll see what happens.
So I am a big believer in paper trails. Okay. I like to be able to I hold the receipts on everything. I don't like to lose the receipts on anything, because sometimes you need to go back and remind people of what you bought. So I would say, if there is physical evidence that Hartford had asked for these items to be brought in before the game, and you could show negligence on the part of Hartford, I would think it could completely dispel the notions that Rhode Island is complaining. And it was and I'm not denying your story at all whatsoever, but I just like to add that added layer of protection in to show that the negligence is on the other side. Show, what they promised and what, they had requested. beforehand. Yeah, we'll take care of your stuff. We're, just doing this for safety protocols, and then, prove that, hey, the Hartford people took it. It makes them look bad. And you know what? Good. If they want to do that, make their lives a living hell when they come in here in August. Like, I want to see old school Providence come back. I want the 80s to come alive. We're going to dig up Buddy Cianci's body. We're going to bring him out to the game, and he's going to guide us for how we screw with these idiots from Hartford.
Just a bunch of old guys from Federal Hill coming out and enjoying the game. I love it.
Old school is the best school. That's what they say.
So ultimately, we got the banner back.
Yeah.
I don't think that they gave it back by choice, though.
Oh, no.
I think Hartford made their supporters group give it back.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. And you know what? I hope Hartford offered an apology.
Maybe to the front office.
That's what you put on Instagram next. That's the receipt that Tom's talking about. But Tom, so on top of this theft of one banner, did you see the banner that they put out and are claiming was a TIFO? Because I don't know about you, that looked like a club sponsored, club purchased billboard to me. What are your thoughts on that?
Let me see it. I did not see their TIFO.
While you look at it, it was a giant jersey with Trinity Health just screaming all over the front top of it. And then it was just the Hartford Athletic logo, which in the supporters group culture that I know of, that's Team Bought. Yeah. And they're bragging that it's like the ultimate TIFO ever used in USL. This is how disassociated the fans of Connecticut are.
You know what that looks like? You know when the Bruins had that banner thing where the fans would pass like the B across the TD Garden in the past, like they would have that B flag. That's what Hartford did. They bought their own flag and gave it to the people and said, okay, we're going to have you unfurl this at this time because that drone is going to take a picture of it. That's what happened. That was not organic.
Right, but they're not pretending. The Bruins aren't pretending that that's coming.
No. The Bruins but I'm saying that's what it looked like. That's what it looked like. It looked like something that the Bruins has done in the past.
Nice try, Hartford.
Yeah, like it's so bad. So then the last thing I want to ask you before we jump into the actual on-game performance, did you listen to the play-by-play from Hartford? It was hilariously anti-RIFC. Now, I've gone back and listened to some of your work with Mike D on the 790 play-by-play calls, and you're definitely RIFC in favor, but you call it as it is. You're very fair. When we don't do something right, like you call out the players. I'll never forget the association of Prince Sadie and the setter at this point. But like, I was blown away at the lack of fair neutrality when it came to play-by-play calls. Is that something that we can expect from you moving forward, that you're just, especially when it's a Hartford game, you're just going to just dump on them at all times?
No. And my ultimate dream one day is to work as a national play-by-play announcer doing soccer. And I believe it starts at the ground level doing local games like this, where you really have to show your neutrality. You have to show your professionalism. You have to show your range. You have to show, how you are as a researcher and a producer. I think if you're really serious about playing in the land of the big boys, which is I do want to do, if I could do USL championships games on a national level one day, I would do it. If I could be the next play-by-play announcer for the TV broadcast for Rhode Island FC next year, which I am throwing my name into the hat for, I'm going to do it. And I want to put on a professional broadcast that sounds like it could air anywhere in the country. I want it to be exciting. I want it to be informative, but I want it to be fair.
Okay, so we'll just have to get you to just take that statement back for one game, and then we'll be completely fine. Just one game. We'll pretend that didn't happen.
But no, I just pointed out that Hartford was inorganic with the TIFO and everything, so I can do this. I can do Talk Show Tommy, but like when you take me out of Talk Show Tommy, I have a job to do. So
can you and Mike D just switch for one game? Let him be the play-by-play and you be the commentary.
I'm like a Disney animatronic. You have to program me for different settings, okay? Like I go from exactly. I can go from Talk Show Tommy to Hot Takes Tommy to Tommy Betts to Prize Picks Tommy, and then play-by-play announcer Tommy. It's a Disney animatronic living right in front of you.
Turn a dial.
Or you just have multiple personalities or are schizophrenic. I mean, it could be any of those things, right? So
multiple personality disorder as well.
Okay, but before
100%.
I want to get this out there. This has nothing to do with the game, but I have a feeling that our friend on the Quahog corner in a couple of minutes is going to just spew just lies and slander. So I want to get this out here so I don't have to talk about it next podcast on Thursday. After the game, there was some things that happened, and I'm just going to get ahead of this. So the buses leave, and there's 5 or 6 of us left, and we decide we're going to have a walkabout in Hartford. And what do? We go to the brewery across from the stadium where all of the Hartford fans are still around doing their thing. La Banda rolls up in their car. Now, we couldn't bring the drums in. That was a requirement from Hartford because they didn't want us sounding louder. Even though I heard our chant on the entirety of the broadcast, they didn't want our drums in the game. La Banda's wagon had all of them in there. La Banda parks their car right outside the only exit out of Trinity Health. We start waving the 401 banners and drumming for 30 minutes until the loudest foul-mouthed Karen in Connecticut comes screaming out of one of the doors saying she's trying to go to sleep. Jason, I looked at my watch because for a second I felt bad. It was 9:40 at night on a Saturday night.
She also lives above a brewery
next to a stadium.
I feel like that's a personal choice.
Like, what in the world's going on, Connecticut?
Just
like
go somewhere else.
Don't yell at me before it's double digits at night. Like, this is insane. So we all scream at her, just giving her the business of like, get out of our faces.
We're respectful too. We pack it up and say, all
yeah,
right.
We packed it up. But then a Connecticut fan came up to me and he said, do you guys even get fans to your stadium? Tom, I know data. I never go to a show unprepared. You've got your receipts. I'm always armed with data. I immediately said, fact check. How many people do you think are coming to your games this year versus ours? And who do you think has more? And he got all old and senile on me, started screaming about how Connecticut's the greatest place in the world. I kept saying, fact check me or come out to Rhode Island and we'll figure this out when you show up next time. Before he could even answer, friendly fire, a woman from the 3rd story, probably the same woman, dumps a bucket of water. She tried to hit me, hit the Connecticut Hartford athletic fan square on, and it was just poetry in motion. So I want to go on the record. I didn't try to fight anyone. I didn't try to harass anyone. I did insert myself into a hairy situation. I screamed at some people.
I love how that full medieval, like a bucket of water was just dumped on us.
Yeah. You can't make that up, Tom. You can't make that up. But that's the truth. So whatever Kevin says on his thing, it's not going to be that. He's gonna be salacious. He's gonna build it up to something it wasn't. That's the truth. So I just need to get that on the record.
Well, it does. You're making it sound. You made it sound like you were like shooting heroin outside of some woman's house after the game because you were so distraught because Rhode Island FC tied again. Like that's like where I thought we were going. Not, oh my God, I'm in 10th grade and some old lady from the house next door is upset because we're still playing kickball in the middle of the night and it's only 9:30. Like if we're trying to start things over that, like my God, what can we get tougher, please? Like, can we get thicker skin?
Tom, Kevin went on the record and said to people that I tried to fight an old man and a lady. So I just got to make sure that is crystal clear.
No, you were defending the honor of Rhode Island FC. That is what we need. We need you. You are a soldier.
Hey, Bill said he's going to be at the game.
Oh, his name was Bill?
Yeah, his name was Bill.
May have been partaking in some lubricants.
Well, we have to point out Bill. We have to
be fair, real
Bill
quick.
at the game.
We didn't meet any of the supporter group. We don't know.
I'll find
the
him.
few random fans we did meet. They were fine.
Yeah, and also too, minus the supporters group, there were plenty of fans coming up to us saying, "We hate your guts." Maybe some expletives.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming, and we said it right back to him, and then said, "Get out of our face," and then that was it. But no, it was very hostile but amicable at the same time. It was a really weird position to be in. Not going to lie.
I do appreciate our friend Seaton from Hartford that we had on the show, but I will say, I don't think there's any question which fan base is more passionate about their club and which state is more passionate about their club. The TV networks might not show it, but the fans have made Rhode Island FC. I don't think the fans make Hartford. I think Hartford just exists because it's existing, because it has nothing else.
Not a lot to do over there.
So let's get into this game. This is one of the most confusing things I've seen so far on the season. We've been a 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2 all year, and what happens? Coach Kano goes and says, "Hey, what if I flip this on its head and introduce a 4-2-3-1 into the mix?" First question, Tom, goes to you. Was this the right call? I mean, obviously we got the first goal so early in the game, but hindsight is 2020. Was this a night to mix things up and experiment, or was this the night to put your best weapons, your most gelled pattern out there? Walk us through what you saw when you saw this formation drop.
Yeah, so I don't think you have your best formation out there yet. I think a big problem is that I think Chico's having a real – I think we all know Chico is having a real tough start to the year. So I think if you really want to get the best out of this offense right now, I think it's still early enough in the season that you can experiment. I think Hartford's defense is soft enough that this was the game to do it. I mean, the midfield play and the defense, I think, has been good enough this year where it's kept you, again, relevant into June. Offensively, you have to figure out something because this team just isn't getting it together offensively in the final third right now. I think the build-up play is good. When this team connects in possession, it's good. But, even with this new formation of a 4-2-3-1 the other night, you're still seeing problems in the final third when it comes to that, last touch and that, whether it be getting a strong enough shot in there, getting into the right spaces inside the box. Like the build-up play is good. I think, you have a lot of speed and the pace out on the wing. So you want to exploit that as much as possible. You have a lot of strength in the middle between Clay Holstead and, guys like Noah Fuson and Jack Panayiotou. The problem is, how do you get the most out of JJ and Chico? I do think they probably go back up to 2 up front because that's probably where this team is strongest. But again, we're talking about a Hartford team that, while you shut out Louisville in a 0-0 draw at home, a couple of weeks ago, they gave up 6 goals to Louisville. So yeah, it was the perfect game to try something different because you need some, and it's early in the season. It was a good combination. Do I think it lasts? I think maybe parts of it. I mean, it wouldn't shock me to see Colin Smith start again. I think you give that kid more of a go. Would you like him off the bench late in games because of the speed he brings? Maybe. But I also, you have JoJo off the bench too that could help. The other thing about Colin too that's really good, he's aggressive. So I think it gave other guys the chance to step up and prove themselves too. So listen, it's a good problem to have when you're this deep, because I do believe they're deep. It's just a matter of what's the best combination right now, and you just haven't figured that out yet.
I heard there was maybe a disagreement or something as why Alves got benched.
So I've heard from the club that he got a little bit of a knock, and there's some performance opportunities there, but he I don't know if it's a full injury or like if it's not been letting him play his best. But that
he also
was one
didn't
of the
have
reasons.
a great game against Louisville.
No, but I think when we put Smith and then push Steven Turnbull out to left back.
So the inverted left back was what I didn't understand. Yeah, I don't know if that's your answer.
Got the best out of him that night.
Turnbull did not have a good night on the night in terms of his passing stats and getting into the third, which on the right, he's historically dangerous. I mean, he's usually one of our biggest shot takers and pass converters into the final third because he's so comfortable moving up the flank. We didn't see a lot of that coming from the left side. And also, too, with JJ in that, winger midfielder position on the night, it was really the responsibility of Smith to combine with, Chico and Williams to overload that right side. So this was kind of like an off night for Turnbull. But, the inversion does a lot to help destabilize the plan of attack for Hartford, right? Like I'll give coach the credit there. But I guess I'm really more curious, is it the double switch of this where it's like you changed the formation and then you introduced complete new tactics of the players who are already getting comfortable in their roles? did that help or hurt us as well? Again, we scored a goal in the 4th minute. That's the earliest goal we've ever scored in club history. So it's really hard to argue with the results. I am a little disappointed that we couldn't do anything with that. I mean, you go up that early, that soon, like you think at least you could convert something else out of it. And there were chances on the night, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like we really did much with the formation style or the approach after. I guess that's my only concern is was it enough? Was it too soon? And it sounds like, Tom, you think that was on Derby Day, that was the to go in and mess with the formation and the tactics.
Again, you're not playing against one of the better teams in the conference. You're playing with a team that you're fighting for a playoff position with right now and doesn't have a great defense. And quite frankly, talent-wise, you have a better offense than they do defensively. So, you can kind of, I think, in my opinion, afford to kind of play things differently. And, I know people are going to love this because of the way the final score plays out, but you did outshoot Hartford 14-11, and you did have more shots on target 5-2. So it's not like, it was a failed effort. If you went out there, you only put up 1 goal and like 2 shots on net. Okay, then this was a waste. It was a good idea that we tried it. But you know what? You showed yourself that you have some range and some versatility. I think that's going to make a difference down towards the end of the year when you try to go on a playoff push.
I haven't had a chance to fully rewatch the game, but when I looked at some of the stats for the second half, Hartford, and from what we saw in the stands, really played very negative football. It's very defensive. They only generated 0.06 XG in the second half. Look at their stats columns. It's like they were just playing game management at that point. They're just trying to take the point home.
Oh, you could see it in the final 35 minutes. Anytime there was contact made, Rhode Island FC got back to their kind of form at the beginning of the season. 16 fouls, but only 1 yellow card, and that was a yellow card that happened in the first half. Anything and everything that could knock those players down was being given. And we haven't talked about the ref in a long time because I think after the first few games we came to understand the quality of what refereeing looks like in the USL, and I didn't want to continue on that narrative of like making them a main focal point of each of these discussions. But this ref was definitely slanted in favor of Hartford Athletic. I went and Googled their name just to make sure they weren't like born in Connecticut or anything of that nature, because it was bad on the night. Like, and honestly too, you don't go 16 fouls and only get 1 yellow card. This was a ref that did not want them to play, and it wasn't consistently given to Rhode Island players either. I saw JJ Williams, like the broadcast even said, like he got sniped. There was a challenge. 2 players went up. I don't remember. I think it might have been Asidu for Hartford, and he got horse collared and thrown to the ground on a 50-50 that was at their feet, and nothing. No call made, and it almost ended up in a goal scoring opportunity for Hartford. So like this was a rough night to be in a derby and not have a ref that was fair and balanced.
Maybe because of JJ's size, he's not going to get those
calls. JJ's never going to get
fair.
those calls. Yeah, he's never going to get those calls.
Yeah, I saw the play that you guys are talking about. I thought the one 2 weeks ago against Louisville was worse, where he lands on his lower back and you're like, oh my God, did he just like break himself in half? Because it looked ugly. But JJ knows how to sell too, right? As a big guy. So I think that's, maybe it helps you down the line. I mean, I'd have to go back and watch the refereeing. I can tell you that the Louisville game was probably the worst ref I've seen all year, in my opinion, if we're talking about just bad refereeing and how it affected the flow of a game. So, I think that sticks out less to me. I think, the important thing is that you didn't let that first half get out of hand, because it could have. And then things got reined back in. So, you take the good with the bad, you get out of there with a point, and, you're on to Detroit City this weekend. And, hopefully you can find your first win since April 23rd. This team desperately needs a win now. You got to get one in the month of June. You have to get at least 1 or 2 in the month of June. Can't do another month of withdrawing and losing.
Maybe if we just flip that too and say, hey, they're playing negative football. They're just trying to stop us. Maybe the onus goes back to RIFC. Like, what is our plan B?
Well, I mean, I don't know. But I think if we're going to be fair about getting a win, we really have to assess this Chico situation. Yeah. One, I'm glad he's okay. I was terrified after the collision with Doyle And I wasn't even sure if Doyle got the goal. It felt like it was just the exact replication of it. I didn't see his feet actually touch it, but he was like taking the celebration. But Chico went to ground immediately. And then he came over to the head athletic trainer and was pointing at one of his quad muscles, and like there was panic in his face, like this was going to be it for him in the 4th minute. He went on to play a majority of the minutes for the night. But like, we got to start talking about Chico, Tom, because and before we say, is this a Chico problem? I want to start with this data narrative so that way you are on whatever you're going to tell us. On the night against Hartford, even with this negative football, we only had 97 of 424 passes in the final third. And of those 97, only 21 of them were direct forward passes. So I've been thinking, especially with the inclusion of Jack P now, that we were solving some of this midfield gap in terms of connecting our front line to the midfield. I don't know that 21 forward passes on the night is enough to feed. We've got tons of lateral passes that then are dribbled up the flanks for crossing opportunities, but that's not the same kind of stat that can count towards that line. But Chico having what, Jason, he hasn't scored since Tampa Bay. That was game 3. Like, we definitely have a Chico problem here. So what does this guy got to do to get back into Golden Boot contention here? Like, or just into form for that matter? Like, is this us, Tom, picking a player that didn't fit our narrative, but he was so good we couldn't? Or is there something else going on here that you're seeing on the pitch?
Just a striker out of form right now. Like, I don't look at him and I think Giacomo Vrioni. Like, I don't think that. I think
hashtag not an MLS podcast.
I know. But I don't look at a number 9 and I think, oh my God, he's helpless. Like, I think of a guy that just can't find his form right now, and I think he's trying to find his place in this system, right? Because that what you said is important. This team loves to push this ball out to the wings, and then loves to play the crosses into the middle. And the reason why I think, at least I can speak for myself, I gave them a lot of grace was because, early on, at least when it came to some of the offensive issues, well, this team has a system that they want to play. JJ's not in the lineup right now, but they're not going to deviate from the system. So when JJ comes back into that 2-striker set, everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows what their role is and how they're supposed to execute offensively. The problem is that JJ's not doing his job to be enough of a distraction on the field, to open up the offense more. I don't think really he's gotten in any good positions inside the 18 to score this year, really. He's not dangerous right now, and he's not acting like a Golden Boot winner, which is really disappointing because this is a guy that, could elevate his game to the next level and take it to, to MLS if he wanted to, but not playing like this. This team needs him. If this team has any hope of getting into an MLS Cup playoff, USL Championship playoff position this year, he has to score. This team, like, you have everything else right now. I think the biggest reason why you don't have more wins is because he's not doing his job offensively. He has to put the ball in the back of the net for you. You can't rely on Prince Sadie to come off the bench and get you a goal. JJ's got his role too, but you came in as the Golden Boot winner for last year, and as one of the perennial top USL Championship strikers, period. When he was signed, everybody said, oh my God, this Rhode Island FC team is the real deal. I would say, like, if he doesn't turn it around, this team's not going to is not making the playoffs. He needs to start scoring. Forget about USL Championship Golden Boot winner or being in that conversation. Be the best player on Rhode Island FC. Be a guy that takes over a game. He doesn't take over a game. Jack Panayiotou has taken over games so far more than Chico has. Jack P's first game here against Sacramento, arguably the player of the match, and he was signed on the Friday before they played. Why is it that he's able to integrate himself into the system and make more of a statement on a game than Chico can? It's disappointing. It really is. I would have expected. I'm not saying the guy had to be the top goal scorer in the league. This is still a new team, but you would have expected more by now. You think about how his missed penalty in the U.S. Open Cup makes a difference. His missed penalty versus Phoenix, that's the game that stands out to me the most. Makes a difference. He has to be on the score sheet or involved in every single scoring play as much as possible. And if he's not, this team is going to have problems making the playoffs.
If we think that since the Phoenix missed penalty, he hasn't, maybe he's out of form, different players respond to like different situations. Do you think we need to bench him for a little bit?
I mean, we have the versatility
under?
and the depth at this point that, with JJ, without a healthy JJ, I would have said you're out of your mind. But with a healthy JJ now, you're telling me that we couldn't see a JJ Williams, a Mark Doyle, and a Noah Fuson in a front three. I'm not angry with, or JJ as a lone target striker in that same formula, but you bring Fuson in earlier. Fuson being benched in this game was probably the biggest surprise for me. I don't hate what coach did, but that was probably the biggest shocker. He's got more speed than just about anyone else. So like over Doyle, and again, hard to say since Doyle scores the goal, but like that was probably the biggest kind of aha moment for me for the night. But I kind of agree that like, at least when we have games now that are not up against fierce opponents, maybe this is the experimentation phase of like what starters really aren't your lock-on starters. But again, I don't know how I've met Chico. I've had conversations with him. He seems like a nice guy in person. And then you kind of see him just being that like bulldog on like the ref's heels whenever things aren't going their way. So like, I don't know what taking a striker out of form does to a guy like that, right? Like, is that going to destroy his mental stability more?
Well, you look at the upcoming schedule, right? So this weekend you got Detroit. Then on Wednesday you go to Memphis. So, and then on Saturday, or is it Sunday, the 22nd? You're
back to Louisville.
22nd is a Saturday. Yeah. So Saturday you're in Louisville. So is the game to send a message on Wednesday? Do you have him sit on Wednesday, play him on?
Out of those three opponents is probably the lowest ranked, right?
Well, yeah, they're also, but I mean, they've been coming in clutch and beating teams that they shouldn't be beating. Like that's one of the things we're not doing as a group is we're not beating the teams we should be beating, and we're only drawing against the teams that we have no, quote unquote business beating. But before we talk about that, there's an interesting stat that we buried after Chico got signed, and I want to make sure that we're all cognizant of that. Chico scores in bunches, and he scores against like weaker teams. When you look back at the track record last year, he did not do well against the likes of San Antonio, Sacramento, Louisville, Indy, but he was butchering like Miami FC, Tulsa, Orange County. They weren't as hot last year. Like he had no problem picking on those weaker teams and scoring in like hat tricks and in braces. So again, we've been playing tough teams, right? Like I think we actually have the lowest amount of mid-table and bottom table performances on the season so far. So that could be another activation for him to get hot. Maybe he just needs to bully a couple of our opponents around that are, quote unquote lesser than him. But like to your point, Tom, like with this rotation, maybe this is that time to start seeing those formations. It needs to be addressed. Our finishing needs to be addressed. We only got 0.9 on an expected goal average now. We're 22nd in the league. Do you think this team felt like that was a loss leaving Hartford on the night?
No, because I think the way you had to manage that storm, it's more of a loss for Hartford than it is for Rhode Island FC. I think it's disappointing that it's another draw against a team that you're, I think, on paper better than. And I think in the first couple minutes it showed that. But you didn't close, you couldn't put together a complete 90-minute performance. But at the same time, you didn't embarrass yourself in your first derby match. It's just you couldn't, get over the finish line for 3 points. I take if I had to rank them, I would say the most disappointing results of the year so far: Pittsburgh, Sacramento, Louisville, Phoenix. Those are the ones that stick out to me as games where, and Phoenix lower on the list because I believe if Chico finishes that penalty, you go down a goal. It felt like that night should have been a lot different than what it was because you didn't finish your chances. Sacramento, Louisville, Pittsburgh, just not good enough offensively. And those are the ones where you walk away with draws that feel like losses because you controlled the game on your own home field. Maybe Pittsburgh less so than Louisville and Sacramento, but it was there for you and you should have taken it. I don't think it was there for you like it was in those games I mentioned.
Need to get wins at home.
Well, yeah, I mean, not only do we need to get the wins, we lost 12 points from winning positions this year. Only El Paso Locomotive, who is still in the basement with their 1 or 2 wins now, is at more with 13 points. So not only are we having scoring opportunities and problems, but when we are winning, we can't hold the lead. So I don't want to pick on the fact that we're winless in 6, but we are.
But hold on for a second. Do you look at that as a glass half full or glass half empty type of thing? Because here's my glass half full approach. Put on my corporate hat for a second. This is a team that's showing you that they can, for a first-year team that, didn't start playing together, in professional matches until this past March, you're still relevant in June. Okay. And if 1 or 2 breaks go your way, you're sitting in a playoff position right now. Glass half empty approach would just say, oh my God, we can't close out games. We're not doing enough, blah, blah, blah. But if you take the glass half full approach, you're walking away with points against arguably some of the best franchises this league has, and you're still relevant in the month of June. You're still fighting for a playoff position. You're not out of it yet. The season is still alive. So it's like you can be upset that you're not walking away with wins. And I agree with you. That's a big stat right there, that they've dropped 12 points from a winning position this year. We kind of alluded to that a little bit on the broadcast against Louisville. And you look at what happens. It's like you had the lead versus Tampa. You squandered that one. You had 2 different leads versus Monterey Bay FC. You squander that one. It's Sacramento, the most disappointing one of them all. You're able to get ahead on teams. You're able to get out in front of teams. So it's not like you're incapable of making life difficult for these established USL franchises. It's about getting the job done. And I think that comes with just gelling as a team. So I think there's a validation to be upset, but I think it also should be noted that you're still relevant in your first year pushing for a playoff position, and that you should keep in the back of your mind, teams like this usually figure it out in July and August, or find a way to figure it out in July and August.
I've heard that there is a player, potentially another reinforcement on the way. I mentioned it last week. I haven't learned more from the club yet, but I've heard that there may be one additional signing coming. I'm curious, is it defensive or offensive? Because I'm not quite sure what we need. I know what we need is the guys to just get there, right? We need to get to that finished product, get hot into August and then ride those coattails into the playoffs. But I kind of am trying to figure out what do they see that is missing? Because with Jack P, I feel like I don't think Jack P playing on the wings makes a lot of sense. I think he needs to stay central. Switching him with JJ Williams on the night didn't give JJ's passing accuracy dropped tremendously. He was at 53% when that move happened, and then Jack went quiet. He's not I think he can do everything, but he shines in the middle, absorbing a little pressure, breaking away from 1 or 2 players, and then just a distribution out. So I don't know what that signing could look like, but we may have one on the way. That's what I'm hearing.
I would say this team needs a defender more than anything. I think Karifa Yao, is good, but I think he could be a liability. And I think he's part of some of the turnover issues that this team has had this year. An offensive player might make sense, but again, it feels like, listen, you have arguably coming into the year 2 of the more recognizable names in USL Championship when it comes to, strikers. Do you really, is it? And plus, you have guys that you can use off the bench with Mark Doyle, Noah Fuson still. So it's like you have a tremendous amount of depth there. I think it comes down defensively. I think, and I agree with you. I don't like Jack P out on the wings. I'd rather see Jack P in the middle. I honestly think this lineup is set. I think there's little couple of pieces that you can interchange. What do you do with Colin Smith? Do you start Colin Smith or do you start Noah Fuson? Okay, little things here and there, but for the most part, Chico and JJ starting every game. Steven starting every game. Ibarra, Holstead, your lockdown guys. I think you have to look out on the field and think, who is the biggest liability?
McGlynn had better stats than Ibarra, just so you know. I think that Ibarra story isn't over yet. Ibarra is amazing. I'm a big fan of Ibarra, but Connor McGlynn's going to find a way back into the starting 11. And it's got to come through either Holstead or Ibarra, and they were both fantastic.
Yeah, I'm sure, but I listen. I think Mark Ibarra is just playing good right now, right? So it's like he's not losing you games. Mark Ibarra is not the reason why that you're dropping points this year. You're dropping points because your offense isn't scoring. You're dropping points because of careless turnovers in the defensive third. That's it. This midfield is a very strong midfield, in my opinion, because they are able to move the ball up the field. They are winning 50-50 balls. They are making it tough for teams to try to counter on them. So I don't worry about the midfield as much as I worry about, what they're doing defensively and what they're not doing offensively.
When we saw some changes, we did see Clay move into the back.
He looked good. Clay can
maybe
do everything.
Another center back, especially because we don't know what's going on with Grant Stoneman. Supposedly he's close.
He's T-1 week as of this recording to be able to be back on, unless his injuries have continued.
Imagine if Frank was injured.
Oh,
Frank has been lights out our best defender this year.
100%. So hey, listen, we're running long. I want to end with this one question before we go to the mailbag, and we'll do some lightning round, fun, fast stuff. But you're Coach Kano, and you have to focus on one adjustment right now. Is it the back line? Is it the forward line? Or is it one player? What would you do right now? Coach Tom Quinlan, what are you doing?
I'd leave Chico on the field until he makes 1,000 shots.
You mean like after the game's over, like after the 90?
After the game,
has to stay there all night and shoot?
I would have him shoot from different parts of the field, get in a different air. Like, this kid has to score. Like, you are coming into the year one of the top players in this league. Prove it. Show it. He has to be better. That's period. Like, he's been healthy the entire season. Thank God. Hopefully, whatever happened to him in that play when Doyle scores isn't anything serious. He's frustrated. Listen, if I was him, I would be too. Good. But that's what I would focus on. I think this team has got a lot for a first-year team, and as critical as everybody wants to be in this first year, I truly believe this team has overexceeded expectations because of where you're sitting in June and how relevant you still are in terms of pushing for a playoff position in this conference. If you can only do the things offensively that you're not doing right now, this team, nobody would be complaining. Everybody would be on cloud 9.
Jason, what would you do? You're Coach Jason.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it.
That's a good point. Like shooting practice, I think Chico's shown that he can score goals, right? He's just got some sort of confidence issue maybe going on. I personally would like to see a little more consistency. So I would maybe try and just get a lineup that I like and comfortable with, and maybe just play it for 4 games consistently to see if I can get some continuity from the team.
Find who your outliers are.
There's a little bit too much chopping and changing for my likes.
Okay. You're a purity man. You like to see it consistent and then get to it.
I love the flexibility and the hey, let's play a 3 in offense and we'll switch to 4. But part of me thinks that maybe some of this is just a little too complex, high level stuff. Keep it a little more simple.
See, if I was Coach Matt right now, I would do the opposite, which is why this is such a great relationship we have. I feel, and I've been tracking this, I feel like we're not making effective subs to change the game. I feel like we are responding or hoping kind of late into the game. When to Tom's point, when you have that much depth and you can bring someone in the 60th minute versus the 75th or the 80th, especially with the Draw Kings being the Draw Kings, we're going late into the game on most games equal, right? Only the Sacramento game have we come even in the dying minutes of the game, right? So I'd like to see some more experimentation where, hey, you had 60 good minutes. bring in the next crop and like completely transform, like flip this game on its head. We've got really impactful subs. If Mark Doyle, if Sadie are on the bench, Isaac Anking, like these are all guys that provide X factors in their own unique way. Go after the point. We tend to like to make defensive subs, right? Like we bring in, and Colin Smith, I love him. I do think he's got a role in the future, or maybe now, to be a starter. But like when you see Nathan Messer come in or Kofi Chumesi, and we're holding the line like a defense, even Connor McGlynn coming in for another CDM, like it's kind of like, okay, like are we playing for the win at this point? So I'd like to see that. And then second, I need to get Koke Vegas a pair of sunglasses, because Hartford Athletic did our man dirty in that broadcast. When they scored that goal, the sun was just, you saw every player playing like this. Hartford knew what was going on. They knew that they were playing the game at that time. They specifically set us up with the goal against the sun. When they had to flip at the half, the sun was already down. There's a conspiracy here.
Weren't there goalkeepers in England in like 80s, 90s wearing hats?
Yeah. 100%.
Well, can I? I want to.
Anyways, that's our take.
Hold on, wait. I know I'm killing you. I'm killing your time tonight. That's exactly what I'm doing. I am so sorry. You're going 10 times longer than I'm sure you want.
Special episode, Tom. Special episode.
Why would you want to make the substitutions in the 60th minute if the games are tied? Because all it takes is one moment, right? If the guys on the field are playing good enough where it's still a tight game, it's still, one team can break through at any moment. Why would you want to disrupt that chemistry and just experiment with something? Like now, if you're getting blown out,
I don't know,
or you're playing from behind, that's one thing. But if you're tied up, and you still got Chico and JJ and Jack Panayiotou and Clay out there, and Steven, as long as he's not on a yellow card, as long as a lot of those guys aren't on cards, and you're tied in the 60th minute, what's the benefit of breaking up that continuity? Now, in the 75th, 80th minute, you're still tied. Yeah, maybe you pluck a guy off the bench to try to steal a late winner. But in the 60th minute, are you asking for more? Are you asking to change things up earlier in the second half if games are tied?
Yeah, because here's the thing is we now have a third of the season under our belt, and we tend to drop off in the second half of games. We tend to play it safe. We don't get the same amount of conversions. We start to increase our fouls and our tackles. What I'm a proponent of is that if we continue down this path, we are only going to get draws, right? And if we are chasing the game 100%, Tom, I agree with you. If these players have what it takes, give them that extra 10 minutes. And if they don't, make those emergency swaps and see what they can claw back. But there are players that are only getting 5 minutes in our rotation at times, 10 minutes. And if our main starters, our lock-on starters, can't get us a scoreline that favors the win, that's that pressure on these players to go, hey, you want to stay on the pitch longer? Earn it. Because and remember, Tom, these aren't exciting games always. These are 0-0. We have 4 0-0 draws on the season. And yes, they were tough opponents. And yes, I think the three of us on here can recognize that beautiful soccer doesn't always mean these explosive goal tallies. But I feel like the starters are getting the most minutes. They're not doing something with it. And I'd like to see coach be a little bit braver on shaking that up. And also, I didn't say this earlier, so to kind of help cement where I'm coming from, historically, coach makes his substitutions after the other team. Yeah. So he's reacting, or at least he's getting his players out there after the other teams had the choice of how they want to reshape or redefine. And that's great too if you're trying to hold down the lead, but this team's trying to go for wins. They need wins right now. So I'd like to see them be on the forefront of that and shake it up. And listen, if it takes one game and they do that and we get blown out, you all can come and yell at me that it was a stupid idea, but at least it variates the need to get something else out there. So that's where I'm coming from. If we were top 3 right now, top 4, I would say don't change a thing. Do everything you're doing, because we would be higher up on the table and we would have to have a couple more wins, so it would be working. But right now, eight ties. Tom, that's insane. If we are on track right now, we will not only break the tie record in USL for draws, we will shatter it. I think we'll double it by our current on pace projections. That's insane. And I know no team will go that many times in 4. It's impossible to tie that many games, I think. But Nevertheless,
Find out.
we got to do something. Like and as these lower opponents come.
Yeah, no, I think the way you laid out there, you're pointing to more of the offensive issues, and I think that's fair. I think if Chico's not doing anything for 65 minutes in a game, yeah, you got to pluck him out, and that's where having a guy like Mark Doyle is good. So I think when you put it in that context, it's fair. I guess when I look at it, I'm like, do you want to take a guy like Steven off the field if he has a yellow card? No. Do you want to take a guy like Clay off the field if he doesn't have any cards? No. Same thing with Ibarra, same thing with Panayiotou. But when you frame it in the context of, we need these subs to produce offensively because our guys aren't just cut it up top right now, you're dead on. And I 100% agree with you to kind of get those guys involved in the game earlier, because instead of trying to get your legs under you in the first 10 minutes, and then by the time you get your legs under you, the game's over. Now you have a little bit more of a leash to try to steal one.
Yeah, Doyle and Sadie aren't going to do much in 7 minutes of game time average because they're subbing in so late. Like, it's just not going to happen. So this has been amazing. We need to get into these questions. We've got a bunch that are specifically for you. I'm cutting some out of the dialogue so that we don't run super late. We may add them in at the end, depending on how fast you answer these. But first question from listener Tim. This is for Tom. Where the hell did you hear La Banda was protesting the last home game? We got some spiciness here, Tom.
Yeah, so it was on the Fluffy Cohog podcast, which apparently there's a friction in between both sides. If you go back and listen to it, somebody, I think it was either Fluffy Cohog or Evan, that said, yeah, we came in late to the game because we were protesting the Brett Louie thing. So that wasn't me making that up. That was them saying it. Like, they said, here's what I find amazing, Matt. Everybody just thinks I just make this stuff up out of thin air. Like, it's just, oh, yeah, that didn't happen. Like, no, I clearly heard it. If you go back and listen to the Fluffy Cohog corner from last week, somebody in the chat goes, yes, we were protesting that Brett Louie. I was like, oh, okay, because it was in response to people saying, oh, we're just going to go silent if they don't beat Hartford this weekend. And I'm like, well, that's kind of crazy. Like, oh, we've done it before. We just did it with Brett Louie. I'm like, oh, okay. So I didn't make that up. That was somebody else that said it.
So what he's saying is it's Kevin's fault.
Yes.
And that's 100%. Tommy receipts for you right there.
So La Banda, they all have like full-time day jobs. So sometimes they're just running late. Because
there was actually an interesting thing that I think the club needs to work through in the future if they do show up late. They got stuck in the traffic lane to get in. So they need like a police escort to bypass everything to get in when they are going to be running behind. But I think Defiance realized they need to have ownership of a few of the drums so that they can just march in, or you just march in and you don't have them until they show up. End of story. But all right, let's move on. Next question. What do we got, Jason?
Matt here wants to know, with Colin Smith goal preventing defensive play in mind, who's been the most productive defensive contributor, and will the defensive success continue?
I would go No Darcy. I would go Frank No Darcy's been the best defensive player this year. He's a house.
It's consistent.
Agreed. And he doesn't, and like the crazy thing too is he doesn't speak English. So like that, no, but I mean, I'm serious. Like Karifa Yao doesn't speak Spanish to my understanding. So Alves has a bit of it because of his Portuguese part. And then of course, Koke. So like the fact that you are doing so well without even a bit of ESL, like that's an impressive thing to, like, you're really relying on your own merit, your own talent there. All right. Taras asks, Jason, this question's to you. Is it possible that we might not be that good?
Possible, but I don't think it's likely.
How many more games before you change your mind on that?
Oh my God, these people.
Like, I'll say by game 20, if we're still, I'll say at that point, like, hey, maybe there's more problems than we realize are going on.
Would you rather have your problems or the problems that they have up in Foxborough right now? I mean, my God. That's the one thing I will say I hate is just I do think there is at times people overreact way too much and don't think like, wow, we're still relevant in June. We haven't completely blown up the season, and within the first 5 weeks, we still might make the playoffs. Oh my God. Can't we enjoy that for 5 seconds for a first-year team? Yes, I understand it's 8 ties, but my God, you are not the worst team in this league.
I think it's hard, and we got caught up a little bit too.
It's New England though, Tom. Like it's
it's hard to
Oh, it's so
disassociate the
bad. It's
fact
so
that
annoying.
on paper, this is like one of the top teams in the league, right? You
Yeah,
would
on
think.
paper, yeah.
And that's the problem, is we can't disassociate that from the fact that this is a brand new team.
Right.
And also, our coach is his first year as a head coach too, right?
I can't. I mean, listen, I'm along for the ride. So like the beauty of being in the role that the three of us have, if it's a good game, we get to talk about it as a good game. If it's a bad game, we get to unpack that as well. So like no matter what, we have sustenance. Like we're fueled for this. But like I agree with Tom. Like everyone, we have 8 draws, but we don't have how many losses are the Revs at, Mr. Quinlan?
I lost count at this point because I usually just keep track of how they do.
It's like 10,
They
right?
finally made it
I
to
think they're in double digits
now, right?
Yeah.
Well, they pretty much need to win the next 12 of 20 games to make the playoffs. I do know that. They have 10 losses on the year. The first team in the Eastern Conference with 10 losses.
Could you imagine if we had 10 losses? Oh my gosh. If we had 10 losses, like then people should be burning down the front office in Pawtucket on Main Street. But like
10 losses
guys,
in
come
one
on.
draw.
We're fine. So I agree.
Surf in the chat says, besides the club stadium, what is RIFC missing that it needs to build a successful franchise?
More visibility. You know what? I think the great thing is that this logo, I think you see it a lot of places. I think you see, first off, I definitely think you see it. Maybe it's because I'm looking for it, but I feel like the Rhode Island FC logo is more of a prominent logo in this state than the Providence Bruins logo. Do I think you have the visibility of PC Friars or URI basketball? Probably not yet, but I don't think it's impossible. I think the market's there for you. I think you need to increase visibility. And I think I think that's the biggest thing, and is to continue to bring in people that are your casual soccer fans and then your Euro snobs, to prove that, we're not like the team up the road on Route 1. We're different. We got our own thing here. We have a different fan culture. And that's not a slam on the Revs, but like if you got people from Rhode Island that weren't driving up to Foxborough because they didn't want to watch a bunch of American kids play, in Gillette, and it's not their team, you have a little bit something different here to present to the soccer community. And I think you need to continue to do that. You got to continue to bring in big marketing dollars. It's all off the field stuff. I think the on the field stuff has been aces, to be honest. I think, you know what, it could have been worse with the type of players you could have signed. But you're bringing in the right names. You're bringing in the right people to run the thing. It all comes now down to brand viability and brand growth. And that just takes time. But it's just the off-field stuff that I would focus on in terms of growing the image of Rhode Island FC, which I think is a really good question. And I would love to hear what you guys think about it. Where do we go to kind of continue to push this boulder up the hill? Because, every day this thing gets 1% better. So, what's that thing you're looking at tomorrow to get 1% better?
Touched on it a little bit earlier, but like this state is full of soccer fans, but do they know who RIFC is? Like you had mentioned, like we see someone with a Benfica jersey. It's like, oh, hey, have you been to an RIFC game? And they're like, who? Not every soccer fan goes out there and is watching every league, just paying attention to, all the different things that are going on. They probably watch Champions League. Everyone does. And then they pay attention to whatever their home team is, or like, what their dad's team, So there are a lot of people who already have a team, be that, Benfica or Comunicaciones or,
I think what you're saying,
like that.
I think what you're saying though, if we're being like really as politically correct as possible, is we've already gone out and reached out from a marketing perspective to the places where the money is at in this state, whether through corporate sponsorships and partnerships or through the events, right? Like I've seen Rhode Island FC at the Brew Fest. I've seen them at Roger Williams. What I haven't seen is that tap into that minority market, that cultural market, where you've got people coming in that live in Central Falls, they live in Pawtucket, and like they, to your point, would die to go to a game again, but there's no education about our organization going out to them. We've got in the supporters group, I mean, there is a very big, Latin influence in the, the Barra Brava, La Banda 401. You can't tell me going up the street to Foxborough that they have that kind of environment. I haven't seen that environment in a lot of places, to be honest. There is an opportunity to get all of those, diverse groups of fans that just don't know. Will we convert every Revolution fan that's, been living here for 25 years? Maybe not. But like you said, all of those transplants that don't call Revolution their team, but are looking for local soccer, I think RIFC scratches that itch. We just have to figure out how to get that out to them. I'm not smart enough to know that. Otherwise, I would have given the club that information already. But that's where there's going to be real significant uptick is getting into those markets and letting them know that Rhode Island FC is here to play for you and for you to be a part of the magic.
Well, that's the downside of playing at Smithfield right now, right? That, the whole reason that you're in Pawtucket is the proximity to Central Falls, to North Providence, to Cranston, to Providence itself. So it's like when the reason why I personally believe you don't see more of that Hispanic base show out for the Revs is location. You're in white suburban Foxborough. And right now this team is in white suburban Smithfield. And once you move into your urban areas, that's going to be the difference maker. So I think, location is kind of at your disadvantage right now. It would be nice to have more of those Hispanic groups in there, but that's the downside of just being located where you're located. And I think that it'll be interesting to see how it changes next year, right? If you're only putting 2,000-3,000 people in there on a weekly basis and you're not tapping into this Hispanic market, we got problems. But this is what David's job is going to be, is brand viability and brand recognition. This is what you have to do. Continue the growth and continue to lay the groundwork that Brett Louie laid for you before you took over this job.
I agree with that. And, maybe some TIFO billboards in the stands. Every week we just throw that logo up. All right, next question to Tom. Now that this is from Seth. Now that we're almost a third of the way through the season, who have been the biggest overachievers, and what would it take for these guys to get contract extensions?
Overachievers. Lee would probably be the first one to stand out, right? He comes in and takes over the Koke Vegas position. Relatively unknown. Yeah, he was drafted by LAFC, and he declined to play with LAFC and wanted to come to Rhode Island FC, and really has made the most of this opportunity. So I think that's I don't know if I would use the word underrated, but certainly a surprise of the year. I think a big surprise was Jack Panayiotou coming in here and being the absolute spark for versatility in that midfield. I think everybody has played up to their expectations. I think when we talk about this team, it's the guys that haven't lived up to their expectations that we're more concerned with. And that's Chico. I don't think outside of Lee, I can't think of any guy that's been underrated that has blown us off the pages. For me, it's more the guys that have come in here with all the expectations and then have done nothing.
No, I don't think so. I think, and we'll talk about Dequa in a second. Two questions are about him, but I think Lee is a good one. I actually think Holstead's the better one, because that was a guy coming up from an MLS Next Pro team that couldn't find his way into starting minutes on any MLS side. I know the Crew are hot right now, but my God, Holstead has been nothing but a workhorse and a consistent one at that. So I think Lee was a great surprise, to your point. I still think Lee's gone at the end of the season, because you don't keep someone that has that much potential away from another club offering money. But I think you maybe fight a little bit more for Holstead if it's internal to if another USL team wants him. I don't think that's someone you let slip the hook, so to speak. All right, so then let's jump into this. So that was the positive side of things. Jason, we've got a negative one here, right? So
how you throw it on Jason, by the way. Hey, Jason, read the crappy question for Tom.
It's just the order, Tom. Trust me, I've got a crappy question for you at the end, I promise.
So there's two here, and I think just for the sake of time, we're just gonna kind of combine these together.
Bring it down
So
to one,
what's
yeah.
what's the biggest disappointment in RFC's inaugural season? Is it Dequa? And then also here, how much are you worried about Dequa and the overall conversion rate of chances?
Very concerned. Yeah, I'll take the second question first. I mean, it feels like he's not impacting a game at all. And anytime he really has had a chance to do something to impact a game, missed penalty, blows a shot over the crossbar. Yeah, I'm very concerned about Dequa. I'm not saying I don't like the kid, but it's just like, hey, listen, you're the star of this team. You've got to perform in order for this team to win. If he doesn't start scoring, it's as simple as it's a red flag. I'm overly concerned right now. Overly concerned. And I'll be even more concerned this weekend if he doesn't do anything against Detroit.
Are you Veroni concerned?
I'm not Veroni concerned yet, but I can get there. And if there's anything that Mike and Nick can tell you, of all of the positions I'm hardest on, it's that number 9 position. I was hard on Buxa when he first came in here in 2020. It took him some time to get acclimated into that system under Bruce Arena, figures it out at the end of 2020, has an incredible 2021, figured it out. Vrioni, I don't think he'll ever figure it out. I think this is a waste of time. I'm never going to get onto the Vrioni train. I'm not there yet with Chico, but I will be concerned if we get through mid-July and this team is still drawing games because he's part of the problem offensively. And at that point, depending on what his contract status is, because I haven't looked too deeply into that, I'm not saying you cut bait mid-season, but I think you look at guys coming back for next year. Is he the best option moving forward? I mean, again, there's no like behind-the-scenes drama.
Well, he's on a multi-year, Tom.
Now that you say that, I do remember him being on a multi-year deal. But again, it's like, he's the key to everything in this offense that it's supposed to be. So just figure it the hell out, kid.
All right, Tom, this question's also for you. This is an interesting one. This is from Tim. Do you know if you'll be calling the game on radio next year, or will there be something more? Can you expand on your work and contribution to the club? And also, do you know if we'll be building exclusive radio or TV booths into the press box for you? Looks like you got some fans there.
Thank you. I would say right now we're contracted for 10 games with Rhode Island FC. If that expands, that's on Rhode Island FC and Cumulus Providence to figure out. We'll be back for the Detroit game, and then we're back on July 5th for the game against I just had it in front of here. But we're back on July 5th. So, we have 10 more games for the rest of the year to do. I can tell you I love my position working, doing radio for Rhode Island FC, but I would be lying if I didn't tell you that I want the TV position too. Like, I would love to be, the TV play-by-play announcer for this club. And, it's something that I've had conversations with anybody about, but I mean, anybody with, true ambition in this business, when you have this opportunity, you move into a season where things are different. Yeah, I'm definitely going to throw my name into the ring for that. And if TV doesn't work out, I'm hoping that, Rhode Island FC stays with us at Cumulus Providence. And I hope that they like what we do, that we can continue to do it. I know they are building radio and TV booths for broadcasts. It's going to be much different next year. This year they had to do what they had to do to kind of get through year one of the experiment. They were using a crew down there in Tampa Bay. To be honest, I haven't heard very much of them because I'm calling the game myself. So, I haven't really tapped into the Rhode Island FC broadcast. And then when, I am watching the games when they're away, it's always the away commentary, right? So, I'm never able to hear, the home broadcast, which, candidly, this probably makes me sound bad. I don't know the names of the guys. I appreciate, I'm sure they do a great job. I don't know who they are. But this is year one of the, this is what Rhode Island FC had to do in year one for broadcasting. And, it seems like on the TV side, everybody seems to be happy. People seem to be happy on the radio side. I'm not getting any complaints on the radio side. So, we got a good thing going. Let's keep on pushing it.
All right. Bill here wants to know, glad you're talking about RIFC on your show now, but you call yourself New England Soccer Weekly. When will we hear more about Vermont Green and Hearts of Maine? You can keep skipping Hartford Pathetic, though.
The Blazing Musket does a great job covering Vermont Green. Yes, we are called New England Soccer Weekly. I would say, we'll talk about it when it's relevant, right? I mean, Rhode Island FC, we work in Rhode Island. I'm down the road from the New England Revolution. I'm not close up to Maine. I'm not up in, Vermont. And you know what, for that matter, you could just keep going. Why don't I talk about UConn soccer? UConn soccer is arguably one of the better programs in the New England region. Same thing with PC men's soccer. There's a tremendous amount of teams that we leave out of it. But we'll also talk about these said teams when they do something worth talking about too. So they've built up a great culture up there in Vermont. I know what they're doing. I'm aware of it. I'm not covering it on a weekly basis like Sam Minton or Dolan do. But yeah, the more the better. It is great, but kind of where I have my tentacles in the deepest, it's the New England Revolution and it's Rhode Island FC.
That's fair. I think they were just excited that the idea you may continue to expand, and
I'm not against it. It's a long summer. The Revs are terrible. I cannot do another 20 weeks or another 20 games talking about this dreadful New England Revolution team. I can't tell you the anxiety I go to bed with most nights for what this thing has turned into over the last 9 months. Oh,
I can't wait to hear the 40-minute Vermont Green exclusive because the Revs do something so terrible that just Tom needs to remove himself from the equation for a bit. But on that note, final question, and this is for both of you because this was a real question asked at the end of the broadcast. So for anyone who was at the game or anyone that maybe kind of turned it off the second the final whistle got blown, the broadcasters said this on live TV. Gentlemen, if a tie is like kissing your sister, who's got the prettier sister? Tom, we'll start with you.
You know what? I refuse to answer that because I've never been uncomfortable listening to a broadcast before, but what the hell were you trying to get across there? Like, nobody kisses their sister and nobody thinks it's a good thing. Are we talking about inbreeding in Connecticut? Is that a thing that they do out there? Like, is there incestuous relationships?
Why we all hate them?
Like, what the hell was that about?
I replayed it. When you go you watch a goal, okay, let me play it back a couple times. I was already turning this off, was moving on to the next thing, and I was like, no, he didn't just say kiss your sister. Let me go back. And then it was like, oh no, he's actually doubling down and asking his co-anchor. And by the way, the co-anchor, no response. I don't know how you do anything with that.
Sister, who's got the prettier sister tonight? In the first ever meeting between these regions.
I mean, he had so much confidence in saying it. Like he had this planned out at halftime. He thought to himself, all right, I'm going to the sister line for the first ever derby. That was so cringeworthy.
Is that the derby name? The Kiss Your Sister Derby?
Oh my God. If it keeps on turning into ties, then yes.
All right, Jason, do you want to take the fifth like Tom did?
I heard that earlier. When I was watching the highlights, I just don't know how to respond.
This is like the Tootsie Roll Pop, and how many licks does it take to get to the center? We're just never going to know. But on that note, Tom, thank you so much for joining the podcast. You have been a pleasure. Thanks for helping us celebrate our anniversary and the first derby ever in history. We can't wait to have you back on. Let listeners know, where can they find you?
Well, first off, I want to say thank you, and I appreciate you and Jason having me on today. You guys have, again, done tremendous work, and your, again, ceiling is as high as you guys want it to be. You are the pioneers for Rhode Island FC coverage in this area. I think people are very lucky to have you both as a source of information to turn to. I know Matt works tirelessly to make sure that he's getting the right information and actually, not just putting out content, but putting out informative and insightful content that I think, people can sink their teeth into. I haven't had too much time around Jason, but I really do, again, appreciate I've just, speaking off of the time that I've spent with Matt, who I've seen more of, I really am impressed with what the both of you guys are doing. The fact that you guys have captivated an audience the way you guys have in this area is fantastic. Don't ever back down to the mainstream media. Just keep on doing what you guys are doing, because, they're going to have nowhere else to turn. People do have us at New England Soccer Weekly to do what we do, but I think you guys bring a specific focus to Rhode Island FC that we don't bring necessarily all the time. So you're a real treat to have in the market. As for me, at Tommy Quinlan _IV, I'm not very hard to find. You can come and find me anytime. At Any Soccer Weekly is the show page if you just want to actually see when the shows are posted and not deal with my tweets on a regular basis. It's quite a wild ride, though, if you do want to if you do want the full scope of the Tommy Quinlan experience.
He keeps it spicy and he keeps it
That's a
dicey.
great way to put it.
Yeah.
What did you say to me? I'm an intentional provocateur.
Did I say that?
You said when you had your your Pit Viper sunglasses on against Louisville the other day. You said I intentionally stoked the flames on Twitter.
Tom, I was several adult beverages deep, so I have no idea what I was saying.
I remember it. I don't know. Like I said, receipts like a CVS.
Jason, get us out of here.
Make sure to check out our friends over at the Blazing Musket for all your New England soccer coverage. Our
Hi, Sam.
news at www.theblazingmusket.com. And you can follow us on Twitter, Threads, and TikTok at RIFC Podcast, Instagram at Raising Anchor, and that website, www.raisinganchorpodcast.com.
Tom, anchors up the tide, El Clamico, whatever you want. We really appreciate you on and can't wait to do this again.
Love you, boys. Keep doing what you're doing. Can't wait to see you this weekend versus Detroit.